Welcome to the Unplug Podcast and Unplug Talks. I'm so excited to have on Eric Mellgren, who is one of those teachers that I easily send into huge corporations to lead Soundbath. He comes from the music industry, anything but what you would expect a sound healer to be. Super modern, super cool. And I have to say, he can chill out any room with a single ding. So today we're going to be discovering a little bit about how he got to where he is today, what he's doing, what is a sound bath, why should we care, and what is it going to do for us? Come on, let's ask the questions we all really want to know. Eric, welcome to the Unplugged Podcast.
Suze, thank you so much for having me, and what a beautiful intro. I appreciate that.
Thank you. We were talking briefly before we started this. Eric is the first one who has been teaching live since the pandemic at Unplugged Meditation Studios. And I said, it's like he owns the place. He said, the vibe is so good there. And I think the reason why is because he owns the vibe right now. Tell me, what is it like to teach live classes after, not being in the Unplugged studio for over a year?
Yeah, it's being in that space, particularly because you were one of sort of the first homes that I had as I started doing these experiences, a very familiar space. And I very much love the controlled environment, and that studio space that you built is so beautiful. I missed that. I missed being in that kind of space and also seeing these beautiful humans in front of me and working with a real group of people. It was very special. It definitely didn't hit me until I was up front and everybody kind of came in, and then, all of their, eyes up were staring at me, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. I love this. Let me get right to it. Let me hook these guys up. It was kind of my first thing. But yeah, it's just magic. There's, especially when doing this kind of work, there's nothing that really substitutes the in-person experience. It's very tangible for both parties. I was even telling class that they were super appreciative and grateful for being there, but I was equally as appreciative and grateful for being able to host that experience for them. So it was magic.
It was interesting because they come out of the room, I see them and they're like, wow, I'm blown away. But now I'm getting thank you notes. Like, I got thank you notes for your class. Thank you for, allowing us to have a real experience again. And you were one of those teachers that didn't want to water down the experience with live virtual. You just wanted to keep it real. And there's something magical about the real experience. I have to say, there was a moment during this pandemic where I was like, I'm not sure if I want to go back. It's so much easier to just click a button and beam out. But you lose the reality and the vibe a little bit when
yeah. I mean, it really makes you appreciate what energy exchange is all about. And I think since we've all been so disconnected from that for quite some time, for the most part, of losing that real energy connection when you talk with people in person, meet with people, do these kinds of experiences in person, it's a real thing. And I think that once it gets stripped away from you, that you realize how big of a thing it really is. And, going into some of the talking about the virtual stuff as opposed to sort of doing these things in person, we had to take what we could get, and doing things virtually, at least we're giving people these experiences. I very much consider those two things like a 2D experience versus a 3D experience is how I describe it, and the metaphor that I use. And, who doesn't want that 3D experience? But if all you can get is the 2D experience, you got to go out and get that. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, just to touch on, it didn't feel right for me to like these virtual experiences. It just didn't. I was like, it was something inside of me that just said, this is what I'm pulled towards. I need to work with people in person, and I need to figure out how to make that work with who I am. Mm-hmm. I've been able to get through the pandemic and be able to deliver this work as much as I can. But that's what I think made being back in your studio so special for me, because that's sort of my forte. That's my space. That's where I feel most comfortable. And that's where I feel most effective as a practitioner, is when I'm working with real human beings. So, whether that's true or not, or it just hovers in my head, that's where I feel most comfortable for sure.
I understand that. And I have to say the difference between teaching on your own or teaching outside versus at Unplug is a controlled experience. You have the perfect setting, the chairs, someone outside making sure that no one's going to be disrupting you, and kind of gatekeeping in a certain way, someone there to be able to support clients should anything come up and they need to leave the room, etc. Like it's not the same. And I have to say, like, the Unplug staff really holds space in such an incredible way. So I know that Claire, who was there with you, was just as excited to be in the studio. She just loved it. And it was her day off. And she's like, I don't care. I'm so happy to be there. Okay, Eric, this is about you.
Okay.
And just the people who are using your Soundbath on the Unplug app, and which is beautiful, and the people who are accessing you from all over the globe, to kind of understand, who is Eric Melvin?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
It's a great question. I'm still trying to figure that out myself, but I'm getting closer and closer every day.
Yes. Well, okay. So where are you from? How did you were in the music industry. Tell us a little about what you did there, and then how you ended up transitioning to this and then landing at Unplug.
Yeah, so I grew up in Florida. My family actually is from the Midwest, and we moved around quite a bit in the Midwest. I was actually born in Kentucky, but landed and grew up in Florida. Spent about 20 years in Florida, and then I was just like, I need to move on and find something new. With a passion in music, being a musician, a songwriter, I came out to Los Angeles just to be around music, whether I worked in the business, whether I was an artist. I had passion for both things, and I was lucky enough to do both things as an artist, making music, playing around LA, and making a record, and then also working for a record label for about 10 years. So being able to do those things was just beyond my wildest dreams. It was pretty amazing experience. But after a while, I sort of started to get a bit of feeling not a lot of gratification coming from working inside the music business. And the stress just started to become much more than the worth of me being in that industry. And it just came to a point where the stress, I mean, saying that it outweighed the other parts it just wouldn't do it justice. Like, the stress started making me physically sick, brought out my autoimmune disease, lots of different things it was doing to me on a physical level. And I had not ever really meditated before, or gotten into that space, or done any therapy, or any of that. And so it finally came to a breaking point. I think there was a panic attack somewhere in there. And I started going to see a holistic therapist. And from there, that started my journey of really trying to figure out, like, who I was and what I wanted to truly bring to the table. Something I'll never forget, I said from the beginning, is I just feel like I need to be helping people. I just don't know what that looks like. That's what started my journey. So through taking nutritional therapy certifications, getting Reiki Master certified, studying about frequency and vibration through biofield tuning, and then an experience at the Integratron where I did a sound bath. That's where the light bulb went on in my head. And I was like, I enjoy playing music. I enjoy being around music. I can use music to make people feel better. I was like, wait a minute. And that was the moment that started me on this journey towards what I'm doing now.
Who was leading that sound bath? It was a Joshua Tree.
It was a Joshua Tree, yeah. So it's the Integratron that's out there. It's pretty well known now, but it first started coming to light with Anthony Bourdain. He took one of the queens of the Stone Age guys out there. Jason Mraz went out there because the room in itself is magical. Like it's a perfectly acoustically built room. It, made of all wood, no metal. It's just the acoustics in there are unbelievable. And so when I went out there, again, my experience was insane. And so it's just the folks that run that facility were the ones that actually did that sound bath. And it changed my life for sure.
Wow. Have you played there since?
I have not, but I will be playing there before the end of the year.
Okay, I want to go to that for sure.
Yes,
Tell
I
me
want to
what
be
that's
there and
gonna
go
be.
to it.
I want to definitely
Yeah.
do that. So you've played in all different places now. I know I've sent you into different companies. I think I even put you on the stage at Westfield Mall or something like
Oh
you've
yeah.
played in different locations. How does the location affect the sound?
So location does affect the sound, and the best way that I can describe it is whatever environment you're in, whatever other ambient noise is going on, it kind of eats up that sound space of where you are. Now, that being said, the bowls can still kind of take you into, a nice, deep, relaxed space. But depending on what other kind of ambient noise is happening around you, it may keep you from going a little bit deeper and deeper, continually slowing those brain waves down so you can start to fall into like that nice meditative pocket. And so sometimes it can be challenging. Sometimes, everybody kind of knows, hey, this is where we are. Then they can kind of just, be able to give their own expectations of their own experience. A lot of times when you're in spaces like that, just being able to bring this work to people that might not know about it and talk about, educate on the different modalities of meditation, educate on what this sound bath is, how it's helping me. Then, if they're intrigued by it, maybe they can start searching out all of these other modalities, coming to places like Unplug, going to try a float tank, like whatever it is, being able to find what works for them. Because I know that finding meditation in my life has completely changed how I operate.
A lot of people talk about what is a sound bath. I have my own description of it, but I would love to hear to you, how do you describe to someone who's never tried it before what it is and what it does to them and why it works?
So first and foremost, when people are like, "What's a sound bath?" The easiest answer is, "Well, you're being bathed in sound," and that's kind of exactly what's happening. And so my next sort of phrase after that is, all you have to do is come in with an open mind, uh, relax, shut your eyes, and let me do the rest, right? And that's sort of like the beautiful part about it is really just a time for that person to get back to themselves, put everything else aside. And that's why I love places like you guys, like Unplug, that no, leave your phones out here. You don't need them by your side, and give back to yourself for these next 45 minutes, for this next hour. And so I'm using sound to help slow everything down, right? And so I'm using frequency, vibration, and rhythm, all three of those things, to help slow down those brain waves, to relax the mind and the body. It's a relaxation experience. And so, again, I'm using those three things to help put your nervous system into a restful place. As I say it, taking your body away from being in a stimulated state and moving it into a rest and digest state, which is allowing your body to heal at its most optimal levels. And so, at its core, that's what I'm hoping to do, because I talk a lot about, so how do you manage your own stress? How do you manage your own anxiety? Are you getting good sleep at night, right? Are you giving back to yourself in this way? And what's so beautiful about sound baths is sound is so tangible. Everybody can relate to sound. And so for those people that are hesitant about jumping into meditation because they're scared to sit in silence, it's a great way to feel the effects of meditation and get that extra boost from the frequency and vibration in the room. Because I think once they realize what that space feels like, being in that meditative space, that will help them grow their practice to be able to then maybe just not have to go to a sound bath, but sit in a meditation, right? and then maybe be able to start doing it home by themselves. So it's, I almost call them like sound baths, a bit like, putting training wheels on a bike. Like, hey, this is a great way for you to sort of dip your toes in what meditation's all about, right? Just shut your eyes, relax, don't snore, and let me do the work. And let me produce these beautiful sounds and these tones, producing this journey for you to really help to relax and feel like that stress and that anxiety has been scrubbed away and have you feeling clear and blissful. So,
is there anyone who should not do a sound bath? Because I've heard that it can trigger people with epileptic fits, or, I've heard different things like pregnancy. You might want to double check that. Is there anyone who should not be doing a sound bath?
I would honestly double check anything if you're either giving life or if you have a disability or disease where sound triggers you, right? So if sound triggers something that you have, then you might want to sort of look into it, almost like, if you have epilepsy or you're prone to seizures, you're not really going to want to go to a light show where they have lots of strobes, because that's not a great space for you to be in. And so, other than that, sound baths really, I mean, using music to help soothe the mind and the body, everyone should experience it to whatever sort of you're capable of. I think that there's always, circumstances that, would prove that maybe certain people might not sort of take to that. And sound baths aren't for everybody. And it's something that I even teach about in my classes. Like, if you don't gravitate towards this, that's cool. But let me teach you about the other modalities of meditation, because you can find yourself, really being able to have a healthy relationship with stress if you can find a style of meditation that works for you and incorporate that into your routine. So maybe I, guide them into, doing guided meditations, or, using an Unplug app, or going floating, or just, reacquainting themselves with nature. Like, are you not spending any time in nature? Okay, let me give you some things that you can do to sort of help with that. So it's really just pulling yourself away from being in stimulated environments and get yourself sort of connected to the heartbeat of the earth and back into yourself, for sure.
Do you think that drinking a lot of water can intensify the sound bath, since vibration is carried over water? I've heard that you should drink a lot before you take a sound bath.
It's never a bad thing. I mean, drinking a lot of water, I would always suggest you drink a lot of water, and I should probably be following my own advice.
Mhm.
But I always suggest drink more. Now, does it make it more intense or less
Yeah.
intense? You have enough water in your body for, everything to work properly in one of those sessions. I haven't seen any double-blind studies on that or read any papers on that, so I can not say neither here nor there, but I would suggest for you to drink as much water as you can.
You might have to try that on yourself to see
Yeah,
your levels, check your vibrational levels.
100%.
Um, what is the craziest thing that ever happened to you inside of a sound bath?
So, great question. I would go all the way back to my first experience at the Integratron, and I had never experienced a sound bath before. Again, it's really intense in that room. The vibrations are really big, and you just feel them going through you and around you. So I'll never forget, as I was lying down after probably about 5 minutes, I felt like I had a bubble of air underneath me. So it was almost, I couldn't feel the floor. And so that sort of physical sensation, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting and cool. And then it became so intense that I had to open my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, the room looked like it was moving, almost like I was on a boat, right? So it was just kind of moving back and forth. And I was like, I know I'm not seeing things, but I also know that vibrations can sort of, when they're super intense, they can change your perspective and how you see things. And so I was like, wow, okay. And kind of once I got my bearings there, I closed my eyes again. But then I had this physical response where it felt like I had this really long needle going in my right shoulder, and it probably started about 15 or 20 minutes in, and it lasted until the end of the session, so about 15 or 20 minutes or so. And I kept saying it to myself, like, this is crazy. I know it's there, but I'm sure it's going to go away when this thing is over, which is wild in itself. And so it was so painful. I actually had to move, and I turned on my side, and I was like moving my arm around. I was like, what is going on? And after the session was over, I did a few stretches, and lo and behold, it just went away. And I was just, it was just a wild experience. And I've not had that kind of physical experience in a sound bath since then. But yeah, wild is the only thing that kind of comes to mind is describing that. But it definitely changed me for sure.
A lot of people talk about the transformative healing power of sound baths, like crazy stories I hear about people who had back problems who then no longer have them, or had certain types of issues that after they did the sound bath, they were gone. And of course, I want to disclaim, one, I'm not a doctor, Eric's not a doctor, but these
Correct.
things are things that, I've hosted, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of sound baths. And I've heard these stories. So what are some stories that your clients have told you? Disclaimer again, that these are stories that have been told to us post sound baths that you've experienced.
Yeah, it was interesting. So when I was working for the record label, I was already kind of doing this work. I had started this work. And when people around the office started catching wind of what I was doing, it was crazy. I started getting an influx of folks coming to my office being like, oh, that's interesting. And I'd tell them a little bit about it, and they'd be like, I'd be, interested in trying it. So what I did is I started taking care of people in the building. Like, after people were getting off, we'd sneak into a room and I'd take care of 5 people or 10 people. And I started getting testimonials back from everybody. And, just the number one response I would get back, and I probably have hundreds of testimonials from the folks that I was working with in my building and doing sessions around town at that point, was just the extreme state of relaxation is probably one of the most common testimonial or feedback that I would get from folks, is just how they would feel lighter in the shoulders, more clarity, just a blissful feeling, you know, a way to be able, if our stress was measured as like water in a cup, and that water was all the way to the top for the most of us, that just they were able to release all of that water, and all of a sudden that cup that holds their stress and anxiety is empty, right? And so a way to release stress and anxiety in these sessions, it's the number one thing I get back from folks. And again, kind of like you said, like, that doesn't go for everybody. Some people have an emotional experience. Like, I'll get people that will have emotions come up during these sound baths, and they will, sob or maybe even laugh. And some folks have a very spiritual sort of journey where they're like, I don't know where I went, but I got these messages of where to take my business or where my relationship should go. And so it's interesting because every session for every person is going to bring up something different. And so not every session looks the same for everybody else. But what I can say is that relaxation part of just being able to sort of shut that mind and that body down, and how much that gives back to you as far as releasing stress, anxiety, muscle tension. I mean, that's why, people that are having tension in their physical body, that's why they feel a little bit better, because you're actually getting to that state that the mind and the body can relax and repair. And so it's releasing that muscle tension. If we're constantly living in a stimulated state or fight or flight mode, then our muscle tension isn't gonna, no matter what you do, it's not gonna release. And so you have to do things to help with that. And sound baths are just one of the few modalities that can help.
I've put you on several different television shows, and they usually ask you similar questions. What are the most frequently asked questions that you get and the answers to those questions?
Well, I think that you asked the most popular one is what is this doing for me? So my response to that is our brain waves are moving at a specific speed. And so when you come into a space to meditate, and then specifically using sound to help meditate, what you're doing is the rate at which your brain is running starts to slow down. And so we have a speed or a state that's called the beta state. When we're sitting here, we're talking, we're moving, we're using our motor skills. When you come home from work, you fall down into what's called that alpha state. When you relax, you sit down, you start to slow everything down. Then when you can start meditating and getting into that silent space, the speed at which your brain runs goes into what's called the theta state. And in that space, it's also, I like to call it the meditative state, which is a really good pocket for you to be in. It allows the body to start, okay, I am now in healing mode. And so for muscle tension, for stress, for anxiety, I can release all of those things when I'm in that space. So it's a relaxation experience. And that is one of the biggest things that I like to harp on, because that's what this work did for me. So I know what it can do for other folks. And since I know that we haven't been taught healthy ways of dealing with our own stress, like nobody said, hey, this is how you deal with stress. It was always like, meditation's good for you. It's good for stress. So that being said, it's like, hey, develop a healthier relationship with stress, and this is how you can do it, are a lot of things that I like to teach and educate on. And so when people ask me, like, sort of some of these television shows or all of these cool things that you've had me on, that's the main thing that I always hit at, because everybody has some kind of stress or anxiety in their life. So how are they working with that? Are they paying attention to it? We are hopefully hitting a different time in a generation where we are going to confront stress and anxiety instead of just, my parents' solution was drinking. I mean, that's just what it was. The solution after that was really taking pills, and probably even, coming into now. But I believe, especially after what we've all been through in this past year, that people are putting mental health in the forefront. And so hopefully they will be coming to places like Unplug and like myself, and okay, hey, how do I develop a good plan for myself, and what does that look like? And going to a place like Unplug is so important, because you have all of these different varieties of things that people can try out.
I love that so much, because I agree. And also, as you get older, drinking, you feel it more and more in your body. When you're younger, you can drink a lot, and the next day you just bounce back, you're good to go.
Pop right up.
You can, right? I mean, these are for the people who actually used to drink.
Yeah.
But now, as you get older, it starts to affect you more. It starts to slow you down. It starts to fog your brain a little bit. And people don't want that anymore, but they want to do something cool. They want to do something interesting, and they want to do something healing without the fuzziness. And I think that Soundbath is a great way to do that. Not only do you feel like you're having a group next level experience that's just incredible, but you also feel like you just kind of did something really healthy and good for your body that didn't involve, eating food or drinking alcohol. So
Yeah, I often, when I'm working with my one-on-one clients, it's an investment in yourself.
mhm.
You're investing in yourself by incorporating some of these things into your life, and everything in moderation, of course, like, makes a ton of sense. But I can guarantee you that most people probably don't give back to themselves enough in this kind of way, right? And again, I think that there's going to be a huge boom in this kind of work after, especially everything that we've just gone through, because people are going to be looking for things to be able to help themselves out now. And so, it's really, really important, and you are investing in yourself. And, it's less about sort of, consuming, tons of food and tons of alcohol, but, turning it into the ebb and flow all right, of how you do life, and adding more things like this into your routine. It's important.
Yeah, I actually love food and I love alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad there's an alternative.
Yeah, exactly.
What are some interesting things about you, Eric, that would be something I don't know?
Um,
Like, what's your favorite hobby? What do you do when you're not healing?
oh, my
No.
favorite hobby. I have something I've even just learned about myself is I have way too many projects on my plate right now. I have so many passion projects and so many things I'm putting my energy into. I've had to start organizing it, which I'm in a good place with it, but it's really, really cool. So what I like to do on my off time is just play music.
Mhm.
And I love learning instruments that I don't really know how to play, trying to figure out how to play them. It's something that I really that's my passion stuff. Songwriting, all of the things that I was doing that I still continue to do, it fills me up. Those are the kinds of things that keep me going and keep me revved up, which is super cool. A lot of what I'm doing now is really consumed with either my artistic sort of endeavors, and then also sort of my therapy endeavors are really the two pockets that um, that are consuming kind of like my life at the moment. Whether I'm working with recovery clients, doing adventure therapy, or
What's adventure therapy?
oh, adventure therapy. So I mainly use this with my sober clients, my recovery clients,
Mhm.
and basically I work with IOP clinics, in and outpatient clinics, for sober living, and I get them out of their element and I take them out, and we do whatever we can, whether it's hiking, biking along the beach, paddleboarding, kayaking, rock climbing, um, sound bathing, float tanks. It's really kind of just to get them out of the mundane schedule that they have them try something new, whether it's a spiritual, physical activity, nutritional activity. I took them over before the pandemic. I took them over and we were feeding the homeless, doing all sorts of really cool stuff. So, yeah, adventure therapy.
I love that. You know, remember TR
Yeah, I
from
think so.
West Hollywood? He is teaching paddleboard yoga now.
Oh, it's amazing. On Mother's Beach.
I don't know where, but if you're interested, I'll connect you guys.
Hilarious.
Well, Eric, that was so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing yourself with the Unplug audience. Is there anything else you want me to add?
Um, July 30th, I am going to be at Unplug that evening, actually performing one of the sort of pieces, artistically and therapeutic pieces of music that I put together with a cello player of mine. So we
Wow.
actually composed we call it a meditative soundtrack, is what we're calling it. But it's cello along with my sound bowl instruments, and I'm going to be performing that piece on July 30th. So that's super cool. That's coming up. That was a project and passion of mine that I came up. Her and I wrote that piece back in 2020, so it has a lot to do with the emotions surrounding the whole year. So it's a pretty cool piece of music.
Wow. I would love to go to that. This is amazing. You are amazing.
Thank
And
you,
so
Suze.
much.
Thank you for being such a supporter of mine. I appreciate you.
Wait, can I ask you one last question? That
Yeah.
is, how did we meet? I forgot.
You know, it's funny that you asked that, because I had a feeling you were going to ask that. And so in my mind, I was like, I did the Rolodex and I went through it. My downstairs neighbor, who I had been working on, she had, allowed me to do all of my things. And, she was a big supporter of mine. She was at an event and she ran into you. And so she was like, "Oh my God, my upstairs neighbor, Eric, does da 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 da, got your info. And I just cold emailed you." And you were like, "Oh, hi, great. Why don't you come in for a demo?" And I was like, "Okay, cool." And so I came in for a demo. And like after 10 minutes, you were like, "Okay, great. When can we have you start?" And I was like, "All right, I think that went okay."
My hiring process.
It was, yeah. I was like, okay, first 10 minutes, it works.
That's good. Yeah. See, that's all it takes, I think. When you see talent, it takes 10 minutes.
I love it.
So happy that you are part of the Unplug family. Thank you again so much for sharing your story. And for those of you who would like to connect more with Eric, you can do it several ways. One, you can go and listen to him on the Unplug Meditation app. He has unbelievable sound baths there. You can experience him live inside of Unplug Studios. He does private sessions. We're happy to book that too. And you can also check him out on Instagram. Are you still Shotgun Honey? What are we now?
I love it. That's my artistic side of things. But no, the business,
the middle branch.
The middle, yeah, my business in regards to all of this is at the middle branch, yes.
At the middle branch. Yeah. So follow him on Instagram. He's a genius. And thank you again so much for tuning in to Unplug.
Thanks, Suze.
Thank you.